Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for sticking around for our Silversides talk with the author of The Nether, Jennifer Haley. Um, woo! Woo! Um, my name is Zach McKendrick, and in addition to being the director of this production, which I should take off my hat because lighting, because that's a thing. In addition to being the director of the production that you just watched, I have the esteemed pleasure of introducing and chatting with tonight's guest, Jennifer Haley. Jennifer's play, The Nether, a cautionary tale about ethics in virtual reality, won the 2012 Susan Smith Blackburn Prize and premiered at the Center Theater Group in Los Angeles, where it garnered the Ovation Award for Best New Play. The Nether was produced off-Broadway by MCC Theatre and in London by Headlong Theatre and the Royal Court Theatre, transferring with Sonia Friedman Productions, to the West End at the Duke of York Theatre. It has since been produced in 34 countries and translated into 19 languages. Other plays include Neighborhood 3, Requisition of Doom, which I hope we get a chance to chat about today as well, with some parallels to The Nether, as well as, Neighborhood 3, Requisition of Doom, a horror story about video gaming and suburbia, which premiered at the Humana Festival of New Plays, and Froggy, a multimedia noir thriller, which premiered at the Center Rep in February 2014, I believe? 2025. I'm so sorry. My notes are very incorrect. Jennifer has developed and worked at the Banff Center, the Sundance Theatre Lab, P73, and the O'Neill Playwrights Conference for television. She's written on Netflix's Hemlock Grove and Mindhunter. Jennifer is an alum of the New Dramatists in New York City and founder of the Playwrights Union in Los Angeles and currently lives in Austin. If I may be so bold as to say, recently got married, so congratulations. So please join me in welcoming and congratulating Jennifer Haley. Awesome. Hello, it is lovely to see you again and chat with you again. It has been quite some time since we last spoke, so thank you for giving us your time tonight.
Absolutely. Great to be here.
Excellent. I'm curious if we can start talking about kind of your artistic background. When people ask what kind of stories you're drawn to, what do you tell them? What is a thread between your work as a playwright? Obviously, we've with Froggy and Neighborhood 3, and The Nether, there's some digital technology and immersive games and stuff like that. But are there other themes or threads that you see connecting your work?
Oh, I think I just try to get, I'm just interested in the parts of people's natures that they don't necessarily show that many people, and how they either express it or how it becomes expressed by them trying not to express it. So maybe you'd call it, in Jungian terminology, like shadow selves and exploration of shadow selves. And then I became and still am particularly interested in how technology aids that or amplifies these stories or brings people together in spaces where they might not normally find themselves.
Right. I'm so curious. Do you find that as you're writing, do your plays typically start then with a question or a character or a world that you're wanting to explore, or what kind of becomes the genesis then?
It really depends. It depends from play to play. For The Nether, the concept of it came to me pretty all in one, just all in, a very quick flash. And I was thinking about virtual reality and what people might get up to there, what's the worst thing they could get up to there, and then what were the ramifications if what they were doing there wasn't necessarily illegal. Yeah. And then when I was trying to think about what are the terrible things people could get up to, and that's stageable, pedophilia jumped to mind.
Yep.
And I just had this, I was going to write it for a 10-minute play festival in the backyard with some other theater people, and we were putting on a 10-minute play festival, and it was just going to be a dialogue between this internet detective and this guy who'd been accused of these crimes. So it started off like that, and then I was with a group, and we gave ourselves a month to write a brand new play, so I went ahead and wrote basically a 50-minute version of that. And that was really, for me, the first draft process is just see what comes. So the characters really kind of developed out of that process. Whereas the neighborhood started as just a series of dialogues between people in this suburban neighborhood. It was more focused, the video game concept didn't enter in the beginning. It was more about horror, psychological horror, the horror of families trying to navigate each other in a kind of claustrophobic, human-made environment. And then it was actually my teacher, Paula Vogel, she came and saw an early reading of it, and there was a video game element in some of the scenes, and she was like, you could structure the whole thing like a video game. Right. She's so smart about structure, so I ran with that prompt, and that play became what it is. Yes, I would say that usually there is something, I really like plays that are about ideas. So for me, the idea either comes first or is a very strong working concept eventually in the play.
Right on. I remember we spoke a number of years ago, and you were gracious enough to give me some time and talk about kind of the motivations behind the play, or where you were at as you were writing both Neighborhood 3 and The Nether. And I remember, please correct me if I'm wrong, but you were playing a lot of World of Warcraft at that time, or around that time, as a way to find an inroad to connect with family and have like a shared experience. Can you talk about how that experience of being online kind of shaped your thinking around some of the themes or ideas or the writing of both of those plays as well?
To be honest, I started playing World of Warcraft after I wrote Neighborhood 3, after I was in the writing process of it, and knew it was going to be focused around video games, and it was World of Warcraft because I have a younger brother who I watched play this game just like obsessively. So I started playing, and I didn't play with him. I think by the time I started playing, he had like decided he wanted to meet girls in the real world. But what I did find, I started playing with friends. I had a friend when the play premiered at the Humana Play Festival. A friend of mine from New York came and stayed with me in the little apartment they had with me. And I gave her my computer and I showed her the game, and I was like, here, I think you'll like this. This will be fun. And I got up the next morning and she was still playing. She, like our girl, she became like way up there. She played a lot longer than I did, but I was living in Los Angeles and she lived in New York, and we would play together pretty routinely. And it's like we spent more time together in that game than we did on the phone or otherwise. Right. And if anything, maybe somehow that thinking kind of led into the Nether in terms of you can have really viable, good relationships online through these games. It's not all bad.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that, because especially coming off the back of multi-year lockdowns and being at home and connecting with people like this over Zoom, and the communities that exploded through things like VR Chat, the system that we were using for our production here, and finding communities of people to build from in a similar way that it sounds like you're talking about with World of Warcraft, right? Spending time with people and building these new spaces.
Yeah, it was funny. One of our cast members, she played with her boyfriend, and we opened up World of Warcraft. We opened up on my account to show some of the other actors what it looked like, and we opened up my account. I guess I happened to be on the same server as her boyfriend, so we were looking at my character, and she was like, "That's my boyfriend." So we went over and started talking to him.
Right.
And they became my friends who I gamed with, and we would I have a whole folder of screenshots that are basically my photographs from that point in time. Like, everyone came and joined me when I got my mount, and we were all waving at the camera. And yeah, I have great memories from that time.
Amazing. Tangential question: do you still play? Do you still have time to play? No, fair,
No,
fair.
I guess I played it for not quite a year, and then I realized that it was just taking up, and I wasn't even doing it obsessively, but I would spend easily a whole Saturday
Yeah,
doing that. I realized I couldn't give up a whole day every week and a couple nights on during the week anymore for something kind of repetitive that wasn't gonna, you know,
fair.
wasn't gonna,
I,
yeah, it
yeah, I
was
get it. Yeah, yeah.
the same thing over and over again,
Yep,
really.
yep. I mean, jumping off of that, the concept of crossing over, becoming a shade that's present in in the Nether, right? You're talking about doing the same kind of thing and spending that much time in the space. I've been really fascinated with the world of the play that you've made, particularly within the interrogation room, because it is our physical space that we get to interact with. So you're imagining a digital world that feels plausible without it becoming overly technical. You steer away kind of from jargon that would locate us too much in a specific time, which I think is amazing and gives a lot of freedom of play. And we do get these references to crossing over full time, specifically with the terminals or through the terminals. And I'm really curious, how did you decide what aspects of the technology to explain and which aspects that you wanted to leave ambiguous for the audience?
I wanted to leave a lot of it ambiguous. I think there's mention. I think Detective Morris mentions that bodies after if you become a shade, the idea is that you're in there full time, so you have some kind of life support system.
Mm-hmm.
That bodies don't look so good after you've been there for a while, and I just want people to like create their own idea of what that looks like, as opposed to specifying, this is what it looks like if you're in there full time. This is what your bodysuit looks like, or this is, and even the terminal. I didn't want us to be thinking about what computers look like, or how one was plugging in, or if there were ports, or if there were, the actual hardware was not interesting to me, and I felt like the audience could figure it out. Whatever you have in your mind is more interesting than what I might spell out for you.
Fair.
In that regard.
Right on. Did you have any influences that you were thinking about? Because I like, in full transparency, I'm going to like the world of Ridley Scott, or I'm going to The Matrix, and I'm going to these versions of the future where an immersive experience is akin to being born. So there's like womb-like imagery that shows up in all of these sci-fi spaces. So I'm just curious, was there any influence from contemporary sci-fi, pop culture, anything like that you were bringing to mind when you were thinking about writing it, or while you were writing it, rather?
I wasn't thinking directly of anything, but those two movies you mentioned are definitely influences. Neuromancer, Tron. And then I've always, when I was younger, I used to love reading fantasy novels and novels about different worlds. I wasn't as much of a sci-fi gal as I was like a fantasy world, but just something different than our world, which to me, humdrum.
Fair.
At the time.
Well, there's a nice blending with the terminal being kind of like a wardrobe as well, right? Like a Narnia-esque kind of step into the space and get transported,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Right on.
Absolutely.
I'm curious about some of the beautiful moments of repetition. I spoke to the actors about this, and I thank you for this gift so much. In the play, you have some beautiful moments of repetition in the script. We've been referring to them, as we've been working on this on the text, as echoes that we can keep referring back to. It's perhaps most noticeable with the epilogue as a repetition from scene 10, pardon me, or Morris and Doyle's exchange in scene 14, rehashing back and forth from the rest of the play. I'm curious, what were you hoping to do these moments would do for the audience? And do these echoes reflect any of the characters themselves, or any larger themes of memory, identity that you're playing with within the play?
Well, I think of that big echo at the end. For some reason, I always saw that as the end, because with the audience is going to experience it first as a conversation between what appeared to be a little girl and an old guy, and then they were going to experience it more in some ways, because I don't even think of it as a literal scene necessarily.
Yeah.
It was just more, who these people are in the flesh, and does our perception of their relationship change based on who we see them as in the flesh? And I don't think I landed, most of this play is just asking questions. It's not like giving answers to anything, but I think Doyle gets most philosophical about it, because he says the physical doesn't matter. It's all just who we are. We're basically souls, and that's what defines us. And yet, I think we have a very different experience of that scene between those guys as we do when they're in their fairyland, or they're in the hideaway.
Yeah.
But do they need? It seemed like Sims for sure needed those roles, needed that role playing in order to have that relationship. And in some ways, Doyle did too, even if he wouldn't want to admit it.
Yeah, I am so glad that you brought up Sims, because Sims is, we could say, a very complicated character within the world of the play. And that said, the play opens up with Sims and closes with Sims, which I find to be such an incredible choice for framing the thinking around the play. So when you were writing Sims, what was most important for you to capture with that character, or for you to share with the audience?
Well, I wanted the audience to identify with him, basically, even though he's really up to no good, and I don't think we would want. I don't think we would. I mean, when I was working on this, I found out that there was some video game made in Japan that had some similar, just some very dark stuff, and stuff you wouldn't want your kids playing it, you wouldn't want your family members playing it, you wouldn't want anyone to find out that you were playing it. And you look at it now where they're the law is trying to catch up to AI generated sexual imagery using real people. I mean, we're starting to, and obviously we don't want people doing that. He's not a good guy, but he's got a point. And for me, he's also, in terms of his emotional, both him and Morris, to me, they're mirrors of each other in a way, because their emotional landscape is so hidden from themselves. Even they really, in some ways, can't deal with themselves, so they have to go pretend to be other people in these other these imagined worlds. Whereas Doyle, I think he's in touch with himself emotionally and what he wants and what he needs. But really, for Sims, it's to put the audience in the space of the villain, and consider who he is and what he's saying and what his philosophical point is, which is, this isn't real, and we should be free to do what we want in the space of our imagination.
I love this mirroring that happens between Sims and Morris, especially as we kind of follow the descent of Morris in pursuit of, I'm going to get my man no matter what, even if it means, committing atrocious acts that, I want to be up on my high horse about, and having someone as villainous as Sims to kind of just poke at that hypocrisy, I think it's a really beautiful balance of the two characters. I'm really fascinated by the character of Morris, because at both times, when reading and when working with the actors, I find that Morris represents not only an individual investigator in this space, but also a broader system of law enforcement. And we went back and forth a lot with like, how much is this just one person on a mission, and how much is this them as a representative of the Nether industrial complex, really, right? They are corporate oversight, but it's so personal to them at the same time. So there's a really interesting balance that's there.
Yeah. You can't tell if they're vigilantes or if this is some official group.
Yeah, and I mean, and we leaned into that a lot. If you can see a little bit of our set, and I know that Janelle shared some of the images from our set with you. We were really leaning into that with the design of Jay Havens, with it being a really dingy, forgotten server room basement that Morris just decided to drag somebody into and have a one-on-one conversation with. I'm curious then, what interested you about placing these questions of morality, like individual morality and kind of corporate authority, at the center of this play, having Morris kind of represent both vigilantism and their kind of corporate self at the same time, and yet neither as well.
Ask the question again.
Yeah. Sorry. Sorry. What interested you about placing the questions of morality and authority at the center of the play by having Morris represent both individuality and kind of corporate oversight inside of this space?
Well, I guess then when you consider her as the supposedly, detective who is on a moral quest, it kind of brings into question, like, the means justify the ends, basically.
Yeah.
And that's again a question that I don't know if I can answer.
Fair.
Is what she's doing to him. There's this cruelty towards him to get out of her what he needs, personal cruelty. And in this world, like, to cut him off from the internet is like the ultimate cruelty. And to grab him off the street wherever, obviously that's illegal. And then of course what she does in the hideaway is, might even be considered illegal amongst her group.
Right.
If we think about, if we kind of compare her to, say you're with the police, but your underground is in a narcotics group, are you allowed to kill someone? You're not. So, but is what she's doing, is that vigilante aspect of her, is that okay? Like, and again, I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
And it's just like these moral conundrums that I have no answer to. I mean, she shuts him down at the end, and we can imagine that there's a lot of people who'd be getting into the hideaway who won't get into the hideaway. But we also imagine there's just going to be, whatever he's created here, that the technology is going to get out, and it's going to always elude both law enforcement and vigilantes to a certain extent.
With that in mind, I mean, the Nether premiered more than a decade ago. Premiered a while ago, we will say.
Premiered in 2013. That's
yes.
What you're thinking of. Yeah.
Yes. Looking at it now, what feels different to you about this play, or the way that audiences have responded to it? I mean, it's been translated to many different languages. It's been in over 30 countries. What do you notice in the way that it's produced and how audiences are responding to it?
I haven't seen a live version of it in a while. The last time I saw it was in Berlin about 2 years ago. And they do whatever they want to scripts. They chopped off the last scene. So it ends with Morris saying we're free to go. Wow. Which is also an interesting way to end it. But people have, I really feel like it holds up after all this time, and people have the same reaction to it. They just come out and they're like, what?
Speaking of that last scene, there is a note in the play about not wanting the final epilogue to become too sentimental in that final moment. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that offering for anyone that is staging the play, and why that is important to you.
I guess when he says that final line, he says, "You cannot know how much I love you." That works both ways. It's you cannot, you know, I love you so much you can't even comprehend it, or you can't really know how much I love you or whether I love you. And to me, I think there's something about, and this is both a powerful and lonely thing, both powerful and lonely, that really no one else can experience things the way you can. And no one can truly know someone else's experience.
Have the audience responses shifted in any ways that have surprised you from its first? I know you were saying people are still taken back by the ending, but has it changed in any way since its original production?
No.
Right on. What can I ask then? I know you mentioned that the play is asking a lot of questions, and it's not necessarily giving answers, which I think is a brilliant way to let this work just kind of sit and resonate with people. I'm wondering, without trying to answer any of those questions, are there things that you're hoping the audience will walk away from or take away from the show after they've seen it?
I mean, I do want them to walk away with the moral question of it. But I think what pleases me most in terms of the audience reaction is that so many times I've heard that people, after the play, they go out to eat and they just talk about it for a long time. And to me, that's the best compliment there can be for my plays. Because just walk away from a show and then not talk about it again is the least. It means maybe it was fun, maybe it was a great experience, but was it impactful? Was it interesting? Does it make us think in new ways? Does it make us ask questions about ourselves? That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to do. Yeah, and I feel like it did that and still does that. At least in terms of what people tell me.
Yeah,
and then to get out of there and then have the human experience amongst yourself and your friends and your family, whoever you went and saw it with, about what you just saw. That human experience to me is just as important as watching the play itself.
I agree. Has your own perspective on the play shifted or changed in the past decade since it premiered?
No, I mean, when I was writing it, I was kind of, it's funny because I was kind of on like the part, I was almost on the side of Mr. Sims about, freedom of speech and freedom of imagination. And then when I found out about that Japanese gang where this stuff was going on, and when I read about the AI created sexual imagery of young people, it's so disturbing, so I think my brain has one reaction to it, and I'm on the side of Sims, and I think my gut has a different reaction to it, and that's on the side of Morris. So maybe that's where and in some ways, I mean, I think, just everyone personally in their lives finds that, that fight within themselves.
Yeah, right on. We have time for questions if anyone wants to, if we have any questions from the audience. I believe we have someone with a microphone waiting to run. So if anyone has, please raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm happy to I have more questions and I'm happy to keep asking them. But
I have a question for you. So the VR portion didn't work tonight. Like, what is that going to be eventually?
Yeah.
What is the experiment with that?
Yeah. So we are hosting the environment, as our lovely audience would have seen here in person. We're hosting the VR portion in VR chat, which has certain limitations in terms of how many megabytes you can put in any given world. And there were some technical issues where we were able to get some video going into the VR chat live stream space to show what's happening in the theater, but we were having some audio difficulties where you couldn't hear anything.
And was that a bandwidth issue? You think that it was a bandwidth issue?
I don't think it was bandwidth. I think it was just the something. There was a disconnect between the hardware that we have and the software that we're using, and so we're troubleshooting that, which is an ongoing challenge for anyone that is working with new, fun digital technology things.
We did for the production of Froggy, we did a lot of stuff, and we wanted to, there's a video game portion, and we really wanted to have the live actor triggering this kind of moving background behind them, so it looked like a character in a video game. And I mean, we eventually had to ditch that because it was just too glitchy, it was too hard. We had to have an op operate the background to the choreography of the actor. Mm-hmm. So it's still, it's still like, it's still, the tech stuff is still hard.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, speaking of Froggy, our VR stenographer is Owen Brierly, who you know very well. And so, yeah. So he's been working very, very hard to get us up and running. And yeah, it was just this. We were trying to get it to go, and it just wouldn't fire. We can host people in the environment just fine, which is great. It's just the atmospheric sound. There's a huge lag and delay on the actor voices and the actual room tone sound. So we are still working away on it. So hopefully we can get you back in for one of the ones.
I have questions about whether the megaverse or whatever, the metaverse is actually the future. Because I think Meta's pulling back on all that. I think it's still so glitchy of an experience. It's not. We're not on the cusp of it being this universal technology that everyone uses.
Yeah, I mean, this is a much bigger conversation that you and I'd be happy to have with you about the future direction of VR and immersive technology. But yeah, you're correct. It would appear that they're shifting all focus to more of an augmented reality experience and future for the world, and that the wholly immersive VR experience may be getting put on the shelf for a little bit. But there are still, I will say that that being said, there are still a bunch of creators that are out there using VR as a platform, so much so that Horizon Worlds, which is the default kind of internal space that VR, that Meta uses to host a lot of their programs. They recently, I think this was a month ago, time means nothing when you are inside of the rehearsal process, so forgive me. But they had announced that they were shutting down Horizon Worlds, only to just this past week retract that statement and say that they were going to keep it open because people are still producing games in that space and using it very actively. So there's a very vocal contingent of online people that are using the platform to really make headway and make art and connect with people in positive ways, not just some of the
I think that's great. I did the first year of COVID, I did a Sundance, the Sundance Film Festival. I did portions of that via VR, and I had a great time.
Yeah, and there's so many film festivals now that have committed to opening up competitions for VR works, like whether they're created in VR, filmed in VR, and played back as animation, or they're immersive first-person narrative experiences. It's really opened up. I want to flip to one of our questions, though, please. Yes, please, because I could chat with you all night, and these poor folks don't want to hear my voice. So.
Is this working? Okay. Hi, Jennifer. I'm one of the students who worked on like the more production side of the show. And we were just talking about the sort of unique way we've used VR motion capture. I was wondering, since this is, so I've heard, the first time that's been done for one of these productions, what other productions have done for the, presenting the virtual world, or whether you had a vision of that writing the play, what that would look like without the actual VR capture that we're using for our production.
Correct me if I paraphrased wrong, but looking at other productions, how have they presented the virtual world of The Hideaway, and what was your inception, or what was your idea for The Hideaway when you were writing it? Yeah? Wicked.
I I did not know. As you probably know from reading the script, there's almost no stage direction, so I don't really tell people how it can be done, but I can use the first 3 productions as an example of how differently people have done it based
Please.
on the resources they've had. So the first production at Center Theater Group, they built, there was, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the film Night of the Hunter. That was kind of an inspiration in terms of this attic type, this house and this attic, and so this attic type space, and so they built a house that turned on it was a massive house that turned on this big turntable, and so the interrogation room was kind of front and center, and then the hideaway, the girls' bedroom, opened up, and it was this space above that room, like almost like an attic feeling. And then the house would turn, and you'd see the parlor on the other side, and different scenes from the hideaway on the other side. And then the second production in New York, it was at the Lucille Hotel Theater, which is a very small theater, and I'm trying to remember now. We went into the shift into the hideaway. Oh my gosh, it's been so long. Oh yeah, the hideaway kind of opened up, so you'd have the interrogation room, and then behind the interrogation room was this very shallow room, and this screen would slide open, and suddenly you'd be in the hideaway. So they used all these very kind of simple techniques to change the space, because it was such a small space. And then in London, the designer is absolutely fabulous.
Is that the Es Devlin show?
Ed Devlin, yeah, her design is incredible. She showed, like when I walked into rehearsal, she showed me a model of the set. I was like, that looks good to me. But I didn't know how it was going to work. And when I went in, I left for a while, and then I came back during tech. And it was pretty amazing because they had the interrogation space seemed to take up the whole, was on the front of the stage. And then there was like a scrim or something just behind it, and when you transitioned in the hideaway, they would project this whole different. They would project onto they would do this digital version of the house and the hideaway behind the interrogation room, and then that would, I guess, the scrim would pull up, and that would dissolve into the actual space. Mm-hmm. And I'm not describing it very well. It's hard to describe, but that was incredibly technologically driven and with a lot of resources. So, and then I've seen, black box theater productions of it where it's like, here's the interrogation room and here's the little girl's bedroom. So, I've seen it, and this was cool too. I saw it in an immersive, black box environment where the seats, an environmental, so the seating was all around, and you look over here and there was the interrogation room, you look over here and there was the bedroom. It wasn't a proscenium experience, and the environmental aspect of the experience was, I think, more alarming than having a proscenium version of the experience that you could just put over there. The little girl's right here, which always made her very nervous.
Yeah, if I'm understanding the production stills I've seen for the London production of the show, there's a lot of mirrors that were involved as well, which I think reflects the mirroring of the Morris and Sims characters that were involved with that production as well. It's gorgeous design. As Devlin is, incredible. Yeah. Well, and it's a great play to have her to have to anyway. You're both fantastic, is what I will say. We have a question over here.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you so much for being here. My question is, what is your hope for the play and the text moving forward? Is there any vision or things that you hope for future audiences?
What is your vision for the play moving forward? Any hopes or goals for future audiences? Yeah.
I just hope it keeps getting done, and it does. I guess it's being done in Madrid next year, and there's something about it being done in Hungary, so it's still making its way around the world. I'd love for it to have another New York showing again. I'd love for it to have a resurgence. I tried writing I started working on a screenplay version, but it just didn't feel it wasn't as exciting to me as the play. And felt like it was losing some magic, but I haven't given up the idea of continuing to try to crack into that. So I would like for more people to experience it, like larger numbers of audiences to be able to experience it.
Yeah. Right on. Oh yeah.
Hi there. Thank you so much. This is great. Although I'm sure you've heard them ad nauseum by this point. This might be a bit of a mouthful for you to repeat, so bear with me. I'll do my best. Thank you. Thank you. Right. Yeah. So I'm sure that you know this, but when we're dealing with themes related to child sexual abuse and the depiction of pedophiles, it's something that we ought to be careful with when dramatizing. So I was wondering, from the perspective of the playwright, what were some things that you were keeping in mind to avoid sort of going into the territory of using it as a tool to shock the audience and to make sure that you're staying meaningfully engaged with the theme of child sex abuse?
Did you catch any of that?
I just catch little bits of it. So.
Fair enough. So you're going to help me out. You're going to correct me if I'm going off the rails here. When dealing with the subject matter with child sexual abuse that shows up throughout the play, how do you make sure that you are staying meaningfully engaged with those themes and that subject matter without just using it as spectacle and shock value?
I don't know. You tell me. I mean, if you're shocked by pedophilia, you're shocked by reality, I think, because it happens all the time. And what we would consider normal people perpetrate it.
Yeah. Oh, wrong. Yeah, I mean, I think there's one could point towards recent headlines of documents that have been released and highlighted in the world.
If you want shock and awe or whatever, go look at the Epstein files. I couldn't make that up.
Yeah, right. Well, and you know, that speaking of the stuff that happens in VR, there are a number of cases. The Washington Post recently, 2 months ago. Again, forgive my use of recently in broad terms, but was talking about stories of abuse that were happening in virtual spaces that were being intentionally quieted by some of these VR companies so that their bottom line wasn't impacted, right? So it is astounding to me how relevant the play is a decade after it's been written, right?
Yeah, some of my coworkers and I, we were like, all the files are being released. It's like, oh, so Pizzagate is real. You know, it's not happening in a pizza joint, but it's basically, we've been joking about Pizzagate as a conspiracy. It's unbelievable. And it's not.
Yeah. I got no question to follow that up. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly, right? Like it's this, I think this is part of this is what was informing the questions that I have around the corporate influence and the nether as a political body versus a corporate body inside of the world of the play. The references to Disney coming up in the text kind of pushed the needle for me to think that the nether is a corporation, right? It's business interested. There are many businesses that are in the nether, as Morris says. And so how does that impact the way that we prosecute people or the way that we see truth and justice if the lens that we're seeing it through is through that of like corporate oversight and interest, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Sims asks her, he's basically saying, your bosses just want this technology is what they really want.
Yeah.
They can sell it.
That's it, right? You want it because the code is so lifelike, that's all. And Morris even says, right, we don't care about you, we want your code. Which is such a really beautiful moment that we've been playing with. Anyway, so there are other questions.
Yeah, wish I could have seen it.
We'll get you in to see it. We'll get you in to see it, and if not, we'll get you an archive for sure, so that you can take a look. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer, for being here with us. And I feel like my question is almost partially answered, but I'll still throw it out. So I just knew this play was written, like it premiered in 2013, which is 13 years back. So when you were writing this, how distant did you feel what you were writing was from the real world? Because right now, looking at the play, I feel like software-wise, it's totally doable. The only thing that's limiting is like the sensation part, where in the play it's like, okay, you get peak sensation and everything, but in the real world now, there's no technology sort of like that. And I really saw traces of like Ready Player One and like The Matrix in this play. And apparently this show is before that, like before Ready Player One, before Altered Carbon, all these shows. So it's really interesting to see how you sort of like foresee tech is going to move in the future. So I really want to know how distant you feel, you're feeling when you were writing the script and from a reality.
Yeah. Can you
yeah. So the question is, 13 years back when you were writing the script, how distant you feel the script is from reality?
When you were writing the script 13 years ago, how did you feel the script was distant from reality? How do you feel it was distant or maybe disconnected from reality?
Reality, and how do you feel like right now, how close it is to reality?
Oh, versus how close it is to reality right now with the advances of technology, right?
Well, when I was writing it, the Oculus was conducting a Kickstarter campaign to actually fund its making. So it was still VR, it was still an idea. I feel like within the time I wrote it, VR became a thing and is now we don't know if it's going to become a thing. So it almost went through this it happened very fast, way faster than I thought it would.
Yeah. I think we have time for. Oh, we got a question up in the back. Way up in the back. Oh no, that guy's trouble. Don't give that. Oh no, that's trouble back there.
Oh, hello. Something I was really interested in when we were reading through the script was the hideaway is set in a Victorian era house, and I think the Victorian era makes perfect sense when you think about it as a time when people were also afraid of technology. Like it was, most of the literature from there is like shaped by people being afraid of like the ramifications of the Industrial Revolution. But then Morris has this line where she says that it's an era associated with innocence. And like the difference between like my perception of the Victorian era and that line is like so crazy that I just want to know like why the Victorian era.
One of our wonderful actors has a question about the parallels and the usage of the Victorian era as the setting for the hideaway, given the parallels between the fear of technology then, the fear of technology that is present maybe today. And if you can speak to the choice of setting it in the Victorian era, is that, yeah? Good.
Yeah, I think it was definitely an Alice in Wonderland sort of a vibe to it that I think just came to me right away. And the Victorian times is when it was a repressive time, very, sort of sexually repressive time, but it's also a time when children were also began to be perceived as beings that deserved a time of innocence, as opposed to someone else to help around the farm or the factory. And it was also the time of the Industrial Revolution, so there was so much changing so fast, and communications technology, everything was changing so quickly. And yet, I think we look at that as a very quaint time.
One last question, and then.
Yeah. Hi. I'm really curious about the parts in the play where it's discussed like what makes a human, and is it the world, like the physical world we're living in, or is it the experiences we have? Um, Under the context of a world where trees are rare, like does the world still make us people if we've completely destroyed the world? And just what are your actual thoughts on what makes a person and how that relates to the world and how we treat it?
That's a big question, um, uh, and a great one to end on. Your thoughts on oh geez, I'm not. I don't even know if I can do that justice. On what makes a person in the context of the I guess Doyle's philosophizing about the self and the higher self, and especially in a world where we have removed all trees, or trees are a very rare and wealthy commodity for certain people. What does that say about what it means to be human in those spaces? Is that, yeah, more or less? Yeah, thank you.
That's a big question. Let me try to answer that in 1 minute, because I just thought of something with regards to the last question about the Victorian era also. Like, I was trying to imagine what it was like. I mean, before records, music could only be heard in person in a group of people.
Mhm.
And then records now, gramophones, whatever they started out as, and suddenly you can hear this piece of music individually, or in an individual space, or just in a small group, or a small. Again, that's another reason I found the Victorian era interesting and kind of applied it to our current communications era, in which we can have such personal and intimate experiences in ways that we could only have in groups before. And now we can have them through technology sort of immediately. And in terms of the bigger, I think it's a really interesting question. Like, if the natural the natural world sort of disappears and it becomes a completely human-made world, which is what VR is also. I mean, I think we live in very human-made worlds as it is. Cities obviously are very human-made worlds, and suburbs are very human-made worlds, and kind of interested in architecture, like how do people behave in different spaces, and how does this space tell you how you should feel or how you should behave? And I have no idea. And I don't know if there's any examples, any way we can look at, like, what maybe, I don't know, I think of a prison or something like that, or solitary confinement. Like, if the natural world doesn't really exist for you anymore, or if going outside is just a miserable experience, which it is in Austin in the summertime. It's just always that way. Who are we and what do we become? I have no idea. I don't want to know. Or do we change, or can we make something that's just as fulfilling in a different way? I don't know. Through art, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's such an interesting commentary on through the show on the idea of access, like wealth and access, right? Like Sims is a wealthy person, so is able to afford natural materials, trees, a garden, space, right? Morris makes such a big deal out of the access that they have. And then again, we're looking at the tension of the individual access through the means in the hideaway and the money that Sims is getting from the guests in the hideaway, versus kind of the corporate oversight, which is very cold and distant and just wanting to sell people things. And so there's a really interesting tension between who has access to these natural materials, which I think really reflects the technology that you're presenting in the play, right? Because a VR headset is still an expensive piece of technology, relatively speaking, right? A new Quest 3 is still $500-$600, right? A new game station or a laptop is still an expensive tool or toy. So there's barriers to that access And so who gets to create these artificial worlds that we're accessing, I think becomes a really interesting question that's also at the center of the play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting question.
Yeah. I think that is all the time. And I thank you so much for the time that you've given us to chat about the show. And I promise we will get you either into it or to see it once we get our technical pieces worked out. But it's so lovely chatting with you. And I hope to follow up and we can have another chat sometime soon. Thank you so much for being here. Round of applause for Jennifer Bailey.